Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy Research Talks, where we try to simplify the complex terminologies in research methodology, and we try to introduce uh, the application of the abstract knowledge in research methodology. So, today, what we are going to be talking about is how to discover research ideas. And research ideas can also mean research problem because idea has to do with the problem you are trying to solve with your academic research. So, what we are going to be doing specifically today is to explore ways in which you can come about discovering your research problem. How do you recognize quality research problem? Secondly, we will take you through the steps by steps of how you can identify the problem to solve academically. Thirdly, we will also talk about some feasibility studies that you can also do to ensure that the research problem that you are coming up with is actually worthy and is of quality. Moving on, we will also discuss how to move from problem to research objective and connection between research objective and research questions. And finally, we will present some examples on different types of problem as it relates to different type of research purpose. I should mention that if you haven't seen the previous video that we did on what purpose can academic research serve, just try to find time to watch the video. It's going to provide enough background that will help you understand some of what we are going to be talking about today. Let's start with the question of where do we find problem to study? Since we have already established that academic research is all about solving problem, providing solution, reducing bias and all that. So, what kind of problem can we solve? How do we identify this problem? The first thing that you have to remember, you can't do a successful academic research without having enough theoretical background in that area. A good place to start is to choose research interest. And by choosing research interest, I mean identifying a field of study that would not be too difficult for you to understand the terminologies, the jargons that they use in this field. So you can start by checking textbooks of related field. You can also visit journals, academic journals, and see what are the issues that they are discussing in this journal. You can also go through conference proceedings. These are typical ways of uh, starting off with coming up with good research idea. The reason why this is very important is because to complete a research, you are going to be spending a lot of time and sometimes a lot of money. So you do not want to commit that much energy and money into something that you are not interested in. So the first thing first is to first of all explore if you have an interest, if this research domain is something that you will understand and something that you are interested in. And to do that, there are some steps that you can follow. Number one is write down your broad area of interest. So, an example of broad area of interest might be communication, right? So, in communication, we have a number of subfield, right? We have uh, family communication, for example. Marketing communication is also within the broad domain of communication. We have mass communication, sometimes we call it broadcasting or film production. Uh, We also have organizational communication, etc. So you want to write down these different areas, and then you can now zoom in, pick one of them. So when you do that, when you pick one of this area from the specific sub areas that you have written down, then you can now go in there and see what type of issues that researchers in this domain, what kind of issues are they discussing. You want to know what are the theories that they are using. You want to familiarize yourself with the core terminologies in that domain so that you know what you are talking about. From each of the subdomain, like I said, identify the phenomenon, the issues that have been studied, or understand the terminologies. In fact, there are some arguments that says if you approach an academic article and you happen to read about 3 lines and you do not understand what the article is talking about, so that's a domain that you should not approach to do research there because it's going to be too difficult for you. And when you understand everything in that area also, if let's say you pick an area that you understand everything, it's not also advisable. So you don't want something that is too easy and you don't want something that is too difficult. So you want to strike a balance in between. You understand the idea, but there's still more for you to know. So that's a perfect area to say, I would like to do my research in this domain. Moving on, now, if you now understand the basic phenomenon, the issues that they are discussing, so you can now approach the 4 Ws and 1 H questioning to your environment. So the reason why we say some research is of quality is because probably the research offer good advice to the practitioners in that field, or you offer some information that can advance the knowledge in that area of study. So then you have to create some questions. This time around, you have not started writing, okay? So you just want to look around and say, oh, what is this and what is the application of this information that you have gotten in your environment? Okay, so when you meet concepts, try to look around, ask question, what exactly is this information in this domain still accurate today? If not, it might be that is where to start. Or is this information not too general? Are there any advancements in this domain? Maybe the concepts you see are concepts that are already outdated and they need to be refined or re-examined to see the accuracy of this concept. So those are the questions that you want to ask at this level. Ask some practical, rational questions of the fact you meet in textbook, for example, or some discussions you see in academic journals. So you want to do some theoretical review and contextual review. So what I mean by theoretical review in this instance is that you want to understand the theory. So when we say theory, we want to know what are the theory that they are using. Do I understand the theory? Have I met the theory before? Do you know a bit of history of the theory? So it's important because theory is one of the pillars of academic research. Really, we say every academic research sits on 3 pillars. One of it is theory, and the second leg of academic research is the data collection, and the third one is the data analysis. So whatever quality work or non-quality work that you do, it is based on these 3 things. It is either you have misinterpreted or misapplied a theory, or you have collected data that does not relate to the problem you are trying to solve, or you have analyzed the data wrongly. So you don't want to build a research on a wrong foundation. So that's why I said at this point you want to do some theoretical review. You don't not necessarily have to write, but do some cursory review and try to understand the theory that is behind the discussions in this field. And contextual review is you might want to look at some different culture, or you want to relate it to your own perspective, your culture. How accurate is this information that I have found in journals, or I have found in the conference proceedings, or I have found in textbook. So you want to relate the discussion back home and see what are people saying in the domain. If sometimes what it's likely going to happen is there could be some inconsistencies, like people that do this in Asia perspective versus Western perspective versus African perspective. Or when you are doing the contextual review, you might notice that okay, there's only some maybe Western perspective. Your own particular perspective have never been explored. So that might be a good way to move ahead. And finally, you want to do a preliminary study. So when I say a preliminary study, I don't mean you should actually start uh, a a huge research before another research. No. So you can just make it a feasibility study, talk to supervisors, talk to experts in this field. By the time you read article and you read conference paper, you will have seen the name of people appearing and reappearing in this material. So you might want to send them emails, or you might want to talk to your supervisors because they usually know more than you do, because they are your supervisors because they have years of experience in doing research. Or you want to talk to librarians. So doing that, the advice I have for you here is that, so at this stage, what librarians are going to do is they will direct you towards quality sources of information about this issue, the right journals to consult, the right database, so that you are exposed to good materials early on. When you now have access to quality materials, quality research materials, you want to be able to define the key terms of your interest. What I mean by that is you are able to understand the terminologies that perfectly explain the experience which you are trying to study. So sometimes we see some practical experiences, like okay, I can give an example of, let's say you are in a classroom, you see a student that is finding it difficult to present in front of the class. So in your head, that might be a new thing. But if you check, if you have the right name for it, what they have been using to describe this kind of experience, you might find out that, oh, that's what they call communication apprehension, for example. So if you coin your own word, if you don't use the right theoretical term for it, you will type different thing in the database and you'll be collecting different materials, not knowing that, oh, I'm actually working on things that have been, excessively studied, you know. So that's why you want to define the key terminologies accurately at this level. Make sure that it relates. So when you find that studies have been done repeatedly in this area, it doesn't mean that you cannot also join the train, but you don't want to reinvent the wheel here. So you want to offer something new, right? So that's why when we define the key terms of our ideas correctly, we are able to join the correct train going to the location that we intend to. Also, we want to translate the key terms, okay, into the core, and your core ideas. You want to be able to translate them into the interest of in your statement of interest. In order not to make this video necessarily too long, so I think I would divide it into two parts. This would be part one, and watch out for the part two, where we will continue on how do we move from problem statement to uh, research questions, research objective, and how do we connect between these three elements that are so important for any research. So a bit of recap for the today's discussion would be: first thing is to have an interest. An interest usually emerge from subfields of your area, and then looking into uh, where researchers in that field have been disseminating their work. So you can pick a topic that is of interest, do some brief on the surface reading on it. Make sure you understand at least 50 to 70%. You do not have to understand 100% because by, by going through your research, you will end up understanding more. So when you do that, talk to experts, talk to supervisors. They will also point you towards uh, areas where you can, you know, locate good quality, because it's important that we reference good sources in our work, especially at the beginning. So you don't want to be misguided. That's really important. So finally, do all of this, and you should be able to come up with one liner of statement of interest, something that might serve the purpose of topic, but not necessarily a topic. It might not be so specific, but try to describe your interest in terms of the idea or the issues, relate it to your environment, to something, to a new context. You might be finding something in context A. Try to see if you can expand it to another context, context B, and then you pick it up from there to come up with a problem statement. So now coming up with problem statement and connecting problem statement with a research objective and research question would be our next point of discussion. So I invite you all to watch out for that. Uh, I will be saying my goodbye now. Please, if you like what you have just watched, try to subscribe, click on the notification button so that when we put up a new video, you will be able to you will be notified, and then like our Facebook page and share the word so that the benefits will go as wide as possible. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.